All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there, just like you, just like me. All right, before I get going with this video, I don't have physical product to show you, but there are two albums coming out Friday, which I've heard in advance of their release. One is by a new band called Killer Kings. Burn for Love is the name of the album, courtesy of Frontiers Music. Really strong album. And Perfect Plan, Brace for Impact. It's their third album, and it is probably their best work yet. Also, Tommy DiCarlo has a new single out there called Dancing in the Moonlight. It is not a King Harvest remake. Just want to let you know that. Sounds a lot like Boston. Just saying. Great music. All of those courtesy of Frontiers Music. Putting out some good stuff, as they often do. So let's talk about Steve Perry. Steve Perry fans, they are always right. I debate and argue with Steve Perry fans, and they tend to want to elevate Steve because he is such a beloved figure, right? And regardless of what he does these days, it's hard to take sides in this situation when lawsuits are going back and forth. And, Neil Sean, John Kane decided to trademark some songs, and they didn't get permission, according to Perry. And so they violated an agreement. I'm not sure which agreement it was that they violated. I'm not sure if any of the agreements actually focused on trademarks. They may have. And then if they did, then maybe there needed to be consent from all parties. But if the agreements didn't focus on trademarks, then that might be a loophole, But it's starting to be clear, though, that it seems to be a battle really about money. That's all this is. This doesn't help Journey as a brand. It doesn't really help move product out the door. It does, I would say, keep interest, though, in this, because it is playing out like a soap opera. Most Journey fans believe that the band shouldn't have continued without Steve Perry. Or shall I say, most Steve Perry fans believe that Journey shouldn't have continued without Steve Perry. There were a lot of Journey fans that were upset with Steve Perry back in 1987. I remember I was there, and people were waiting. They're waiting. Is Journey ever going to come back? And then Bad English appeared, and we kind of knew Journey was over. For Steve Perry, this is a real public relations problem, I think. Even though I don't really think he is that concerned about public relations at this point. He's putting out Christmas music. Apparently, it's not a whole album. I've been corrected. People like to correct me on minor details. Okay, so he's not coming out with a full album, but he does have an original song, I guess, that's going to be coming out. And, he's getting into the holiday spirit here on October 11th. Actually, I think when he released the video, it was like October 5th or 6th or something. So, and here in Southwest Florida, we're still trying to recover from this massive hurricane. I know the rest of the country and the world isn't affected in the same way, but it just really doesn't feel a lot like Christmas right now. So I would have waited till maybe November to start yammering about Christmas music. I'm not a huge fan of Christmas music in general, to be honest, because I think what it is, a yearly way to get music onto the radio that wouldn't be on the radio. This is where radio programmers will still put on new stuff by old artists because it's Christmas music, and they like to have this really huge playlist of tunes. And after about 3 days of Christmas music, I'm kind of done. But all of these radio stations, they'll start it on November 1st. They'll go earlier every single year. So is it smart though to put out Christmas music? You bet it is. It's really smart because every single year you'll get airplay, probably forever, right? Until they decide that Christmas is some kind of bad holiday, which they probably will do that at some point. So the trademarks, right? Is this about trademarks? Maybe. It's about principle? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, so John and Neil trademarked what, 20 songs, and they went through multiple agreements over the years, oftentimes sacrificing a lot in order to keep Journey going. Because when Perry said, "Don't fracture the stone," what he was saying is, "Don't continue Journey without me." That's what he was saying. You can't continue this without me, because all of us were so special. They were all so special that they couldn't get along with each other. And that Perry exerted more and more control in the 80s, starting in the 80s. And Jonathan Cain said, "Hey, we're all pro Steve." We gave him the control. On Raised on Radio, we ditched our whole one word album title. We allowed him to fire the rhythm section, right? By the way, which is weird because supposedly these are the people that all got together and sided with one another to try to take over the band. It's just a bizarre story. And I think it's eventually going to be, a made for TV movie, a Netflix mini series. I mean, it would be far more interesting than watching The Dirt, Motley Crue's debauchery or whatever it is. And yeah, that would probably boost interest in the band if somebody wants to do a mini series about this and tell the truth. But you won't be able to really tell the truth until all of these legal proceedings get over with. The Raised on Radio story, that's what Neil Schon is talking about in this latest dust up, talking about how Steve and his attorneys forced the band into signing an agreement prior to 5 sold out concerts in Hawaii, right? So that is a new story, which I don't know if the media is covering it quite the way it deserves to be covered, but I will say this, it's not surprising. It's not surprising because Perry was getting more and more reluctant to be in Journey. He had tasted some success as a solo artist. Raised on Radio was a very different album than Frontiers and Escape. And even though I like Raised on Radio, has a lot of great music, for the arena rock era of Journey, at that point, you could tell it was kind of over. There are other bands like Foreigner and Whitesnake who continued on that road throughout the 80s. Obviously, you had Bon Jovi out there. So you had a lot of bands that were still doing the arena rock scene. I think Perry wanted to make Journey more into the sound that he put out there on Street Talk. And I think he succeeded to some degree. And I think the guys were like, "Look, whatever you want." And so, they acquiesced and they did it. Perry's mysterious disappearance in 1998, where, according to the stories, they're calling, they're asking, they're not getting the response they want. They're hoping that he's going to come back to the band. We all know the story about his injury and the surgery, and it came off as, well, these guys shouldn't be telling me what to do. It's a personal decision, but yet you were in this band. It's kind of like, your work is calling you. Are you going to come into work today? No. I need to have this procedure done, and I'm not sure if I should do it. Right. Well, do you want your job or not? Because if you don't come into work, you're not going to have your job anymore. And I think that's what this amounts to. The guys were like, okay, you're not coming into work. You're not responding to the idea that maybe you should get the surgery. All right. By that point, the whole trial by fire thing was kind of over. It was done. And it's too bad because that album was really like a new starting point for the band. Grammy nominated stuff, first time ever for Journey, right? It was the real deal. And it was kind of like a break from the mediocrity of the 90s. You had Journey coming back and true to form, and also making an album, I think, that was very mature and really had a great sonic quality to it, just sounded amazing. But then that just sort of withered on the vine. They never toured, and they lost any momentum that they got when Perry returned to the band. During the 90s, you also had rumors, right, of people who may have been recruited to replace Perry. Kevin Chalfant being one of them, the guy from The Storm, if you know who he is, great singer, was in the band 707 as well. Hugo Valenti, who such a dead ringer for Steve, not only vocally, but visually. And Hugo's still around today in the band Voyage, which is a Journey tribute band, and a really great guy, but apparently was too spooky for Neil Schon because he looked so much like Steve Perry that it was just maybe just, I don't know. I would have been like, yeah, bring him in, but maybe they didn't want to be reminded of Steve Perry. Maybe Steve Perry was really difficult to work with, right? We could put it out there. I know the Steve Perry fans are like, no, this is all Neil's fault. This is all John's fault. Steve was the genius. Journey would be nothing without Steve. Some of that stuff is true, but I think the chemistry of those guys was more important than just Steve by himself. Because even though Steve enjoyed a lot of success, especially on the Street Talk album, not so much on For the Love of Strange Medicine. I mean, I think the timing of that album and some of the material on that album just didn't live up to his first solo album. So Perry shows up, exerts more control, gets rid of Herbie Herbert. This is the 1990s. And eventually sides with the people who he fired. By the way, Neil Schon has said that he insisted that Valerie and Smith be part of the trial by fire reunion, which was essentially the Escape lineup again, which was probably pretty smart, even though everybody loves Randy Jackson as a bass player. And was it Larry London as a drummer? He was a really great drummer for sure, but kind of a sort of out of nowhere pick by Perry, not as well known, at least to the public, but certainly behind the scenes, he was one of those great studio guys who had the sound that Perry wanted. But all of this is just really hard to follow. At some point, you're like, okay, can Journey just go out on the road and tour, and then everybody makes a ton of money, including Perry, and we all live happily ever after, and we don't have to worry about lawsuits and trademarks, and let John and Neil trademark. They've worked really hard over the last 20 years to build this brand back up because they knew without Perry, this was going to be difficult. So much so that their first replacement singer, Jerry, burnt his voice out very quickly. And then we had Jeff Scott Soto, who, again, according to just what Neil Schon has said, was not the kind of singer they wanted long term. even though they didn't tell him that. And, that's another chapter in this book, which certainly could be explored. Maybe I'll write the book in 10 or 15 years. I don't know. Or maybe sooner. Who knows? Although I don't have all the behind the scenes info and intel about all of this. This is a saga, and it's going to continue. And a lot of the fans that have reached out to me have said, I'm just tired of these lawsuits. I love this band. A lot of people love Arnell, and Arnell kind of gets left behind in all of this. He sings his heart out every night, according to Steve Perry. And he should be given respect. He should be able to share in some of the band's success without this baggage of the old singer coming back and suing the band that he's currently in. I just at that point, it's like, really, and you probably blame yourself. Well, if I was Steve Perry, this wouldn't be happening. The fans don't completely embrace me because I'm not Steve. And there are other factors too that unfortunately rear their very ugly heads when we talk about Arnell Pineda. Just really sad. So in any event, people, the saga will continue. And I don't know when this will be resolved. It's probably good for my channel and other people that want to speculate. Again, couple of new releases coming out this Friday. Killer Kings. I don't have the product yet because it's not out there. It's called Burn for Love, and then Perfect Plan. Brace for impact, and check out Tommy DiCarlo's new song, Dancing in the Moonlight. Boston, right? Remember Boston? Apparently Boston will never be considered for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Why? Because it's really good music that people like. That's why. So anyway, folks, that's my video. See you soon.